First, a multi-Emmy award-winning analyst, Kirk will team with Chris Fowler for the 8th straight year on the CFP. They'll call number 2 Michigan versus number 3 Georgia at the Orange Bowl with reporters Holly Rowe and Marty Smith. Immediately after the game, Kirk, Chris, and Holly will fly overnight to California to call Saturday's Rose Bowl between number 11 Utah and number 6 Ohio State. They'll also be joined by reporter Tiffany Blackman in Pasadena. I'll let Kirk say a few opening remarks about his 2-game assignments, and then we'll get right to media questions like we did with Todd. Go ahead, Kirk, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be with you guys. Happy New Year. Hope everybody's having a great holiday. Just fired up. I just heard the end of Todd there. It's great to hear his voice and gets me fired up. I always enjoy watching his telecasts. I'm a Bull guy. I like the Bulls. I like watching games. So I'm excited to be in a position with our team to go down to Miami. I'm actually going to go to Orlando later today. My son is on the Clemson team, so I'm going to stop in Orlando, watch the Clemson and Iowa State game just as a dad on the 29th, and then head down to Miami right after that game. Get down there late the 29th. And get ready to roll. 31st is going to be a lot of fun. Both teams have so much to talk about, the way their seasons unfolded and the way their season, regular season and then conference championship games ended for them. I think adds a lot of the build up and excitement of this game. And then after that game, for me personally, because I grew up in the Big Ten region, I probably get more excited to call a Rose Bowl game than any game that I call all year. Just from a personal background, personal history. So looking forward to flying after that game and getting to Pasadena. I actually have a 3-hour game day that morning. Once we land, I think we're just going to go straight over to the stadium and knock out game day. And then later that afternoon, look forward to calling the Rose Bowl. So if anybody has any questions, love to answer them.
Thanks, Kirk. We'll start with Ralph Russo at AP, then we'll go to Aaron McMann at MLive, the Ann Arbor News. Go ahead, Ralph.
I think you're on mute, Ralph. Yeah. There we go.
I've only been doing this for 2 years. But I mentioned to Josh Gaddis, Alabama beats up Georgia's defense. It's the one game all year. He kind of kidded around. It can't be a blueprint if only one team did it. Mm-hmm. What I would ask you is, do you see things in Michigan's offense that would allow them to maybe take advantage of some of the things that Alabama did to Georgia?
Well, I think the two play. It wasn't just the scheme. It was two players. It was Bryce Young and Jamison Williams. I mean, you're talking about two of the elite players at their positions. One won the Heisman Trophy, and the other one, you could have made an argument, had a good enough year to be right there to win it as well, but he was on the same team. So you're talking elite players. Georgia, the one question on Georgia before the game. In fact, we taught Dan Mullen, the former Florida coach, was on game day that morning. A big emphasis, one of the segments we did was Georgia's secondary and whether or not, if this Georgia front, which has been dominant all year, if they don't get home or Bryce Young is able to create, how good are they really on the back end? We just haven't seen them tested. And that ended up being, as we know, a big part of how that game unfolded was what happened in the secondary. I've gone back and watched that game probably 6 or 7 times. I don't think it's fair to put it all in the secondary. I think the front looked fatigued for whatever reason. They didn't have the same juice that they played with most of the year. But I don't think Michigan has an offense that necessarily you can just draw up a play or a sequence of plays and say, okay, we're going to be in a good spot to run the exact same offensive scheme that Alabama did. Hey, Alabama gave us the blueprint. Let's just do exactly what Bama did, just because that's not their identity. What I've been impressed with Michigan, while the perception of them is an old school, tough tight ends running between the tackles, and don't get me wrong, they are at times that way. But if you've really watched them this year, it's the wrinkles that they bring to the table that are what has made this offense complete. It's a reverse, it's misdirection, it's a halfback pass for a touchdown. It's bringing in J.J. McCarthy as a little wrinkle. It's just they do enough to not allow you to just, hey, it's Michigan. Here comes 25-2. Let's put 9 guys in the box. You can't do that against Michigan. And so that's what Georgia and Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning have got to be ready for. If they think it's just going to be I formation, 2 and 3 tight ends and ramming their head into a wall, again, there's going to be plenty of that. But Michigan will find ways to be creative with the wrinkles and then get back to being who they are, which is Haskins' offensive line. But look out, I'm telling you, wrinkles and early down play action pass from Cade McNamara, where they can try to attack the Georgia secondary. I'd throw on 1st and 10 if I were Michigan, not wait till 3rd down against that pass rush led by Nakobe Dean and those blitzing linebackers.
Okay, we'll go to Aaron McMann, followed by Zach at the New York Post. Go ahead, Aaron.
Hey, Kirk, thanks again for doing this. We've talked a lot in recent years about Ohio State obviously dominating the Big Ten. How much of what Michigan and Jim Harbaugh have been able to do this year do you think is sustainable long term?
I mean, to beat Ohio State every year, I mean, that's a year-to-year thing. But I think their program, if you go back to look at 16, I mean, they were right there. It came down to that stop, depending on who you were a fan of. He was either short or he got it. But I mean, they were that close to winning that game. So I think the perception, because there just haven't been wins against Ohio State, the perception, even from some of their own fans. I mean, I travel around the country, and before they had this year, they're Michigan fans that were frustrated. I go back to August. I remember talking with some of you on a call, Anjali most notably, that was like, why is this year going to be any different? And what's going to allow Michigan to kind of take that next step? Well, I think the changes he made to his staff had a lot to do with it. And I think the energy from this team, if you've watched them, that's the thing that I've been so impressed with. And that's not something you can necessarily coach. Like Aiden Hutchison and that dude's focus and drive and leadership, and not just him, but the energy that they played with and the belief that they played with when many people were doubting them in September. I think that drove them all year. And that when they beat Penn State in the fashion in which they had to do it, I think it put them in a spot where they were like, you know what? This is happening. We're going to get Ohio State at home, and we're going to climb the mountain. So this was a special year in 2021. How that impacts 22 and 23 and beyond, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But there's a pretty good nucleus of players on this football team that's coming back, and I like how he builds his team. I like how he develops his players. So I don't know if they're going to beat Ohio State every year, but I see no reason for this program to not be, a consistent, competitive program every single year in the Big Ten.
All right, we'll go to Zach at the New York Post, followed by Susan Miller-Degnan at the Miami Herald. Go ahead, Zach.
What's up, Kirk? How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Kind of wanted to switch a little bit, kind of when you look at the big picture of, having a non-Power 5, in the playoff. How significant do you think is that? I know Cincinnati is going to be joining the Big 12, but how significant is that? And how important do you think the result of the game, not necessarily that they have to win, but that they at least give you a representative effort?
I think it's great. I think, we've had going all the way back to Boise State and at the BCS and going back to TCU. And I think Utah one year, they were up there and felt that they had a team that should have been in. There's always been these kind of discussions for a long time. And then, of course, with UCF, when they had some great teams, it's like they just needed an opportunity, I'm sure is how they feel. And now Cincinnati, I think a lot of that's that kind of that work equity that some of these other teams did put Cincinnati in a position and competing against Georgia, by the way, in the Peach Bowl last year, and then winning all their games this year, put Cincinnati in a spot where now here they go, and I think you're right. I'm not necessarily doing it. I'm not saying Cincinnati's carrying the flag for the group of 5, but you know how the world works. that will be the perception. If they lay an egg and they get blown out, there will be many that will say, see, I told you all along. Right. My colleague, Lee Corso, he doesn't think Cincinnati should be even in the discussion, like anybody from the group of five. He's like, you guys go over there at the little kids table, leave us alone. I mean, if he were on here right now, he would just tell you that. I don't think that. I think that, if there's a team that makes a run and has a great year, then let's put them in and see how they do. But I do think you're right. People will jump to conclusions. I think they're going to compete in the game. I don't see them getting blown out. I think they match up fairly well. It's tough to match up with Alabama, as we all know, but I think their corners give them a chance defensively. They got a defensive line that's undersized but quick. They're a veteran team, so I don't think they'll be in awe of looking over and seeing Alabama. And then Desmond Ridder's going to have to make some plays. But yeah, I think what you're saying is fair. There definitely will be a lot of people that will be watching to see how Cincinnati does, and they'll try to kind of take the low-hanging fruit, whether they are competitive or they win the game. Then it's going to be like, I told you they should have been in it all along. Or if they get blown out, it's going to be, I told you they should have never been here to begin with. So you're going to get that kind of reaction. That's the world we live in. I personally will not. To me, it's a case-by-case situation. But I do think they have a shot to be competitive. And I think the Georgia game gives them some confidence, coming into this game, because they outplayed Georgia for really about 58 minutes of that game and lost on a last-second field goal.
Okay, next up is Susan in Miami, followed by Anjali. Go ahead, Susan.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Kirk.
Sure.
My first question is going to kind of be my follow. I just wanted to know your thoughts on what's going on with COVID and all these teams pulling out of bowls, including Miami in the Sun Bowl. And my other question is just in Mario Cristobal's introductory presser, he mentioned lightheartedly, but he was serious too, that he had to thank you for prompting changes in Miami. Do you feel like your commentary on game day contributed to significant changes, and is Miami in a better place than a month ago?
I don't ever like to take credit for anything. I just tell you, I had a lot of conversations after I made those comments, and they were heartfelt. I didn't have an axe to grind. I like Miami. I grew up in the 80s when Miami was Miami, and got close to their program in 01, 02, 03, and did a lot of their Thursday night games and game day, and got to know the personality and really a different way of respecting it. And so I've always had a kind of a spot for their program. And I've just, what I said, whatever I said, I can't even remember specifically what I said, came from my heart, because I want to see them have a chance to be competitive. And so, but I got a lot of calls from, the athletic director, who was the AD at the time, and people on the board. And when the dust settled, I did get a lot of people that reached out and as you say, thanked me for what I said. And if it helped propel change in a positive, especially when it comes to funding, then great. Then that's a great thing. But I'm definitely not one to say, oh yeah, it's because I'm not doing that. But Mario did reach. He and I talked before his presser. He was on a plane, and I'm fired up for him. He's a great coach. He lived it. I actually brought it up to him. I did a couple Oregon games this year, and he and I have a pretty friendly relationship. And it was just he and I one-on-one, no cameras rolling, no microphones, and just kind of BSing about their game that they had. And I said, hey, dude, by the way, I said, this whole Miami thing that's going on, I said, this is like late October. I go, is that a possibility? I know you're at Oregon and everything. He's like, we'll talk about that later, And so he didn't say no. He just kind of said, yeah, maybe that's something we can talk about later. And so it made me think at that time, maybe. And then the coaching carousel got wacky. And of course, he ended up going back home. I'm excited for him. Nobody knows it better than a guy that lived it. Nobody knows that brotherhood, which is unique and strong, like he does. So as much as I am a fan of Manny, and I think Manny's going to do a great job at Penn State, you can't make up for a guy that is part of the program and played on great teams. So yes, not to take anything away from Manny, but because of who's coaching and because of his life and where he grew up and where he played, he's at his alma mater. So yeah, I'm excited for him and for the program, and especially if they back him with finances and give him a chance. Your other question, as far as COVID and everything going on, like everybody else always says, I don't really follow politics. It seems like every time you say COVID, it's like everyone gets scared. Whatever I'm saying is only my own personal feelings. I tested positive almost a year ago to the day, and I still can't smell or taste like I did before. Still, I'm at a 6, maybe 7 out of 10 on taste and smell. That's a year later. So it's not that I don't appreciate it. I've had friends that become really, really ill from this. But I'm a guy that if they say get a vaccine, where do I go? Where's the line? Okay, we're here. Boom, I'm getting the vaccine. I need my second one. Boom, I'm getting booster. Sounds good. Let's get whatever it takes to like get back to living our lives. I personally sign up for, just me, not because I'm into politics. That's just my choice that I've made. And after having it and dealing with this for 12 months, I'll do whatever they ask. I think these players, from everybody I've talked with, I have a son that plays at Ohio State, son that plays at Clemson. I'm not sitting up at night thinking, oh my gosh, I'm worried about my kids. They're all vaccinated. And so I guess I could worry about them getting hit by a car. I could worry about a lot of things, but I choose not to. And so they've done everything they need to do to protect themselves, and we move on. That's kind of my take on it. Hate to see all these games canceled. I'm hoping no more games will be. Hopefully we'll get these bowl games going. They seem to really crank up on the 28th, starting tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be good with the semifinal games and the national championship. And I hope the protocols that were set up during the 2020 season will be updated before we get ready for the 2022 season.
Thank you.
Right. Let's go to Angelique, followed by Connor Riley at Dog Nation. Go ahead, Angelique.
This is just anybody.
I wanted to ask you about Cade McNamara and JJ. And speaking to you as a quarterback, a guy who played the position, how challenging is that dynamic if you're the starting quarterback when you've got a guy like JJ right behind and doing really fine things when he comes in?
Well, I think, Angelique, on top of that, he came in as like, when was the last time they recruited a quarterback with this much hype as JJ McCarthy? I can't recall. I mean, Shea Patterson had some hype, but he was transferring over from Ole Miss. Talking about a high school recruit. I mean, maybe Chad Henne, maybe going back to him. I mean, I know Denard Robinson came in with some hype, but there was talk about him maybe playing other positions, and eventually he was the guy at quarterback. But I can't remember Michigan having this kind of expectations. And every time he would come in games in September, the student body and the fans were like, oh, here he is, our savior. So I think you have to add that on top of where we are at this point. Man, Cade McNamara, to me, I just tip my cap to the guy. There are probably not a lot of people on this call who don't follow the Big Ten or Michigan that know anything about Cade McNamara. They're probably not really, when you watch Michigan, you see Aiden Hutchinson, you see that defense, you see Hassan Haskins, you see Blake Corum, you see that offensive line. Nobody nationally talks about the job that Cade McNamara has done, the leadership that he's displayed. And I think part of that leadership is when things are going in that second or third series and you look over and here comes 9 jogging onto the field, and to not be like, because you're a competitor, right? Not to be like, what the hell's going on around here? But instead to be like over there, first guy cheering for him when he does well, says a lot to me about his wiring. I'm probably more impressed with how he's handled that than the way he's played this year, because that is a big ask from a starting quarterback who still at the time was trying to establish himself as the guy. It wasn't like this is a 2 or 3 year starter. He was still trying to say, hey, I'm the guy, not this rookie. And here comes this rookie in to take some valuable reps away from him. And so, yeah, it's a thing that I'm going to talk about quite a bit on the broadcast, a thing that I really respect and admire. And I think he's had an incredible year for that Michigan offense this year, and not just making plays, like I said, providing outstanding leadership and belief that they can win games.
All right, next up is Connor Riley, followed by Dave Jones at Penn Live. Go ahead, Connor.
Hey, Kirk, hope you're doing well. Wanted to ask you, how should this Georgia offense go about attacking this Michigan defense? And then, obviously, the quarterback position at Georgia, it's always sort of a question mark under Kirby Smart as far as are they getting the most out of it? How does Georgia, and I guess Kirby as well, sort of go about dispelling that narrative that they are getting the most and the best out of their quarterback situation?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, we just talked about Cade McNamara. Stetson Bennett's another guy that I remember when he came in from Mathis, and I didn't know who he was. You know, I didn't follow his story at that point, and he came in, and I respectfully, I mean, he looked like just a little guy coming out there, and I think people have doubted him his whole time he's been there, and I think it's provided this chip that we now have learned to love about his game. And even with everything he's done, there's still people within the, your own people that cover the team and especially the fans that are like, where's JT Daniels? First, for example, in the Michigan game, if he throws a pick, you can just feel the energy like, when's JT Daniels going to be in there? What the hell are they doing kind of thing? And yet this guy's been incredible. I think his mobility has been critical to just keeping plays alive and a good complement to what they're doing with the running game with White and Cook. How do you get over that hump? You beat Michigan, you play in the national championship, you play well, and you beat Alabama. Other than that, I don't know if anything's going to allow this perception. And by the way, I don't agree with it, but I think that's, yes, how do you change that narrative? That's what you do. You don't turn the ball over, play. You don't have to be Bryce Young. You don't have to be Joe Burrow throwing for 525 the other day against the Ravens, but you do have to go out there and make some plays and put the ball in the money and not turn it over and win. And then you go to Indianapolis and you do it over again. You avenge a loss, the only loss of the year. That would make the narrative completely go away. Anything short of that, I think you'll find people that will be questioning whether or not they made the right call in going with him all year. Again, please don't put me in a position where I'm agreeing with that. I just think that'll be the narrative from a lot of people.
Okay, let's go to Dave Jones at Penn Live, followed by Andy Evans at Columbus Wired. Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, Kirk. How are you?
Good.
Josh Gaddis, young coordinator. What do you think his dynamic has been with Harbaugh? Coordinators and coaches with an established mindset. Maybe speaking of narratives, maybe I've been part of that perception with Harbaugh and little Bo and all that. But how do you think that dynamic has worked this year, and what's been the result of it?
When he came in, he was coming out of Alabama, as you know, and it was all about he's going to bring the spread of Mike Locksley and what Tua and Alabama was doing and kind of revolutionize Michigan's offense. That was speaking of narrative, that was the talk. They were going to be spread, and Shea Patterson was there, and it was all about getting athletes out in space. And I think what he quickly found was they didn't have a ton of difference makers at their skill spots when he first got there. And I think through trial and error, I give him a lot of credit, him and Jim Harbaugh, a lot of credit for, instead of just saying, nope, this is the offense, this is the reason I hired you, this is what we're going to do, we're going to be a spread team. I give them a lot of credit for playing to their strengths. And what was their strengths when they came out of camp? The strengths was the running backs. The questions were really, believe it or not, can the offensive line win the line of scrimmage when they have to? And of course, how good can they be at quarterback and receiver, especially when Ronnie Bell went down, who's like the alpha, the guy. And so it's easy to look at them right now and say, that this is a great offense. But my gosh, from where they were last year, and I know it was a shortened season, that offensive line had major concerns. And a lot of that had to do with they were getting behind and became very predictable where they had to throw the ball. but they struggle. And what they've done, I think, up front now with Shrum Moore, the offensive line, that to me has been a big part of their story. And then the recognition from Jim Harbaugh and Josh Gaddis to say, hey, go back again to where they were in September to who they became. You know, I think they became a team that realized we can win games by getting big. You know, we've got tight ends that can allow us to go with 12 personnel with one back and a couple tight ends. Let's pound people, and let's figure out where we are at quarterback. And so they kind of came full circle back to Jim Harbaugh's roots, which is, being an old school, Big Ten style of offense with some wrinkles sprinkled in, from time to time. But that's not what, as you know, David, that's not what they hired. And so I give Josh Gaddis a ton of credit and really admire his ability to bob and weave and not say, nope, this is my system. These players have to learn my system, and that's what we're going to do. To me, he has showed that you can mold your system to your strengths, and that's what they've done this year. And it's been incredibly resourceful and very smart move by that entire offensive staff, led by Jim Harbaugh and Josh Gaddis.
Thanks, sir.
All right, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Let's try to do Andy Evans in Columbus and then Trevor Allen at KSL Sports to talk about Utah before we finish up. Go ahead. Andy, you're on mute. Sorry. Fire away.
I don't think he is, but I can't.
No.
There we are. Nope. Dang, I thought we had him there.
Let's switch it up, Andy. Hold on just 1 minute. Let's go to Trevor, and then we'll try Andy after that. Thank you.
Kirk, I've actually got two questions about the Utes. First one, you've obviously watched a lot of really talented players throughout the year. Where does Devin Lloyd rank among that, especially when you watched him in the Pac-12 championship game? And then number two, given what Utah's gone through with two tragic deaths over the last year, have you seen a team do of what they've done going through so much tragedy in 1 year?
Yeah, I have been just in awe of their season, losing one player and then losing another player who was honoring him wearing the jersey, and the families involved there, and the team going back to the funerals, and then starting the year 1-2, and then making a switch at quarterback to Cam, and then to fight through all that and really stay incredibly unified through all that. They've been one of the great stories of the year in college football. And having a chance to be around them, the Pac-12 championship, you do Zooms like we're doing right now. And one of the players they put on was Devin Lloyd. And I've followed his career and always been impressed with him. But, when you sit down for 30 minutes with him, you just start talking and hearing his story. And I was just blown away. I mean, here's a guy that was kind of long and lanky out of high school, one offer basically. I think it was UNLV. I think Boise, he mentioned, came in late on him. And he ends up going to Utah as just a projection of who he could maybe become. And he obviously becomes an All-American and eventually a first-round pick. His dad was in the military. He's a very serious dude. I love that he helps the young freshmen linebackers, during the week. Imagine this. Here's a guy that takes the young guys on defense into the film room and teaches them how to study film. He's like a coach. In fact, I do a show called The Herbies at the end of the year, and I give an award called the Ultimate Herbie, a player that kind of represents everything that's right about the game, being a great player, but also being a great teammate and just doing everything that I love to see a player do. And he was a finalist and actually won that award as my Ultimate Herbie, because I just think he's the total package. He's everything you want to see. I can just already picture him playing for like the Steelers or the Patriots, and like one of those guys that people are like, where'd that guy come from? Oh yeah. He's playing for 9-10 years as a starting linebacker for Bill Belichick. He's that kind of guy. tremendous leader, incredibly motivated, came back this year to win the Pac-12 and get to the Rose Bowl. Like, if you can't pull for Devin Lloyd, you don't care. I mean, he's been great, very incredibly kind of representative of who this Utah team is this year. And I'm excited to get to Pasadena and have a chance to see them and the Buckeyes go toe to toe.
Speaking of the Buckeyes, let's go to Andy now. He'll have the last question, and he's asking about Ohio State. Go ahead, Andy.
Do you got me now?
Yeah, I do.
All right. I figured it out. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Kirk. Yeah. And Kirk, you talked about in your intro there, obviously the prestige of the Rose Bowl. You're an Ohio guy. You're an Ohio State guy. You understand it. Do you happen to have any insight when it comes to Ohio State, their feelings towards being in the Rose Bowl, and whether or not they should view it as a consolation prize of sorts, considering that Ryan Day said right after they were named as going to the Rose Bowl that it wasn't really what they wanted out of the season. They obviously play for championships and wanted to make the playoff, but now they're going to the Rose Bowl. Just didn't know if maybe you had some insight into that.
Well, Woody Hayes coached a lot of years. Earl Bruce was at Ohio State, John Cooper, Urban Meyer. And I think even before we had a BCS and we had a playoff, the goal was always to go to the Rose Bowl. For Bo Schembechler, it was to go to the Rose Bowl, right? How often did they actually go to the Rose Bowl? Not very often. And yet they still went to another bowl game, and they still were excited to go play in whatever bowl game that they went to. I just don't buy into this narrative of meaningless bowl games. These teams have always had goals. The high-profile teams have always had goals to get to the championship or to get to a certain bowl. And it doesn't happen all that often. But you don't throw in the towel and say, well, we didn't accomplish our goals, so we're not real happy about going to this bowl, but we're gonna go. I was on a team that did that. We lost to Michigan in 1990. And back in those days, you fell way down, and we went to the Liberty Bowl, and we had players on our team that were basically bad-mouthing the city of Memphis and the Liberty Bowl publicly to the media. And we went down to Memphis, and they hated us. And I don't blame them, for the things that were said after that Michigan loss. To me, I get being upset. I get like, hey, we didn't accomplish our goal. We didn't beat our rival. We didn't go to the Big Ten championship. We didn't go to the playoff. But hey, man, we're going to the Rose Bowl. Like, it's the Rose Bowl. We used to have to try to deal with the consolation prize of the Citrus Bowl, but this is the Rose Bowl. And, maybe these players that are struggling to understand it, maybe when they get out there and they get out on that field, maybe it'll dawn on them like why this bowl is different or why it's unique. And I hope they do. I get being disappointed, but you got to shake it off and move on to the next game, and get the bad taste out of your mouth. It's not like because we have a playoff that teams before a playoff didn't achieve their goals and still went to play at their bowl game and look forward to it. I don't get it. I never will. If you're a competitor, you like to play in a game, and let alone a 100,000 seat stadium and a ranking, or a TV rating that'll be as high as a semifinal. My God, there's the tradition, which I know today's player doesn't really get that, but I think you do once you get there and you get into that stadium. I think you start to feel it a little bit more, but I hope this isn't our new norm. I hope it's just an era that we'll somehow get out of. But I think the quote of meaningless bowl games, is the Akron game a meaningless game in September? Are we just going to pick and choose where a game has meaning? Your team is playing an effing game. Like, it matters. You go play and you go compete your ass off. That's what you do. That's your job. I don't get meaningless. I never will.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Okay.
All right. Kirk, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know you got a busy week, and we will be watching both the CFP semis in Miami as well as the Rose Bowl. Good luck this week with your assignments.
Okay.